Welcome to the deep dive. We unpack compelling ideas, aiming to help you see familiar topics, maybe from a fresh perspective.
That's the goal.
Today, we're taking a closer look at language learning, but with a really specific focus. What does it truly mean to achieve, native-like communication?
Yeah, moving beyond just being understood.
Exactly. And our insights actually start in a pretty surprising place with a 15-year-old's, let's say, unforgettable adventure in Soviet Moscow.
Right. So our mission today is really to explore the nuances of sounding and, maybe more importantly, truly feeling like a native speaker. We'll dive into how to bridge that gap between just being fluent and having that genuine cultural immersion, moving beyond, the traditional textbook approach.
To unlock something deeper.
Yeah, more authentic connection with a new language and its culture, too.
Okay, so let's set the frame. The year is 1987.
Right.
Place, Moscow, Soviet Union. Our source, Mark Green, he recounts this story from when he was just 15 on a trip with his best friend.
It's just teenagers.
Yeah, and one night they decided to, ditch their tour group and explore the city's famous metro system on their own.
Bit ambitious, maybe?
You could say that. Now, if you know the Moscow metro, you know it's incredibly deep. Like, the escalators seem to go on forever.
Takes a full minute, he said.
Right. So they eventually made it down, and Mark, trying to be, responsible, pulls out a pen to write down the station name so they could find their way back.
Sensible idea.
He thought it was the station name anyway. He meticulously copied it onto his paper. Then they hopped on a train, marveling at these ornate stations that really are like underground museums.
Beautiful, yeah. But the trouble started when they decided to head back.
Oh, yeah. Mark showed his little note to a few different people, but, each person pointed him in a different direction.
Oh, dear.
It was only when he finally looked up at a sign that he had that dawning realization. He hadn't written down the station name at all.
What was it?
He'd written down the Russian word for exit.
Exit. Oh, no. Imagine that moment. Just pure panic, right? Lost, teenager, foreign country, no clue where to go.
Totally. They finally scramble back up to the street, find a taxi. They tell the driver, in tourist hotel.
Okay, a known landmark.
Yeah. Driver agrees. Mark, ready to pay, pulls out 50 rubles, thinking, that's plenty.
Right.
But the driver just shakes his head, demands no dollar.
The classic tourist trap.
But not just $1, $50.
50 for what turned out to be a short ride.
Mark reckons that was easily 20 times more money than they actually had on them. They were completely stuck, stranded.
So they had to get out.
Forced out of the taxi, abandoned on a cold, dark night, just two teenagers, totally disoriented and, frankly, terrified.
I can only imagine.
But then, they start walking around the block kind of aimlessly. They turn a corner, and there it is.
The hotel.
Just 200 yards away, the very hotel they were trying to get to.
Oh, the relief. But also, maybe slightly embarrassing.
Probably a mix. But here's where it gets really impactful. Mark says this whole experience affected him profoundly in two main ways.
Okay.
First, for years afterwards, just hearing Russian would make him physically cringe, like a visceral reaction.
Understandable, given the stress.
But far more importantly, it seared into him the absolute necessity of understanding the local language when you travel. You just have to.
It became a core belief.
Absolutely. This single, terrifying, yet kind of darkly humorous night, it became the catalyst. It led him to learn another 4 languages fluently in the years that followed.
Wow. So that one misadventure really sparked something huge.
Exactly.
And that personal story, it really underscores something crucial for all of us, I think. Sometimes it's those challenging moments, even uncomfortable ones, that ignite a genuine lifelong passion for learning, for truly understanding other cultures moving past just the surface level.
To really connect.
Precisely.
So, how do we actually start that journey towards a deeper connection? Mark Green uses this unique analogy like a deck of playing cards, all lying face down.
Right. And as you learn, you start turning those cards over. He outlines these key milestones.
Milestones, okay.
So the basic level, that's when you've turned up maybe, say, 25% of the cards.
Yeah.
You've got some foundational vocabulary, basic grammar, you can handle simple conversations.
That's the basics.
Then comes what he calls the magical point of fluency. This is where more than half the cards, maybe 50% or more, are face up.
Okay, fluency.
And at this stage, the language becomes almost second nature. It's part of your subconscious. You can think
Yeah.
in it, communicate pretty comfortably.
And it sticks.
Yeah, he says, even if you don't use it for like 10 years, you can regain your proficiency pretty quickly. It's embedded. Beyond fluency, then there's mastery. This often involves deep academic knowledge, like, understanding classic literature in the language, specialized vocabulary.
Right, the really high-level stuff.
But here's Mark's really key distinction. He argues that to get the real benefits of native-like communication, that feeling of belonging, that seamless interaction,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily need that academic level of mastery.
Really? That's interesting because Mark himself, he had a head start, right? Growing up bilingual.
Exactly. German-speaking mother, American father. He even shares this funny childhood story.
Oh, yeah.
By age 2, he'd apparently figured out the world worked like this. Women speak only German, and men only speak English.
Huh. Imagine introducing him to mixed language couples later on.
Must have blown his mind. But yeah, bilingualism, especially from birth, it offers so much more than just language skills.
Like what?
Well, Mark highlights this profound benefit of having what feels like two identities, being able to switch between them.
Two ways of being, almost.
Kind of. And studies show tangible benefits too, like increased problem-solving ability, even greater resistance to Alzheimer's disease. But for Mark, the really compelling part is the social integration, that feeling of being genuinely at home, being fully accepted among native speakers.
That really raises a big question for learners like us, doesn't it? Can someone who learns a language later in life actually develop a similar second identity? Can we get those deep social benefits? Or is that just for native bilinguals?
It's a great question. And Mark's answer is actually quite surprising. He says, absolutely, yes, you can.
Okay.
He argues that to achieve those true native speaker benefits, you don't need to chase that academic mastery.
You don't need the PhD in literature.
Exactly. In fact, he says you can, and maybe even should, skip this step altogether.
Skip mastery.
Well, skip the academic mastery part to get the social benefits. Think about it. Many native speakers don't have super specialized knowledge or, sophisticated vocabulary in every single domain.
That's true.
But they connect effortlessly, right? His focus is on practical, lived native likeness, not just acing exams.
Okay, that makes sense. So what does this actually mean for you, the listener, if you're aiming for that native-like level, but maybe not planning on writing a thesis in the language?
Right.
Mark identifies 3 crucial areas, 3 pillars to focus on.
Yeah, 3 key things. But before we get into those, it's worth touching on his view of shortcuts.
Yes, everyone wants a shortcut.
Of course.
Yeah.
You hear about things like the burrito principle, focus on the 20% effort for 80% results.
Or those spaced repetition apps.
Exactly. Time-space learning for vocabulary. Mark says, look, these are efficient for learning words or basic grammar points. They have their place, but they don't fully address the real nuances, the pronunciation, the colloquial stuff, the cultural cues that are critical for truly sounding and feeling native.
So no magic bullet for that part.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You still need to put in the work for fluency. But here's the good news he offers. The journey from being fluent to achieving that deep academic mastery. That takes a disproportionately huge amount of extra effort.
Right, diminishing returns maybe.
Kind of. And Mark says you don't necessarily need that super advanced level to gain the profound social and personal benefits of feeling like a native speaker.
Okay, that's a really helpful distinction. So let's get to those 3 core pillars then. The first one, and Mark argues this is often the most overlooked, is eliminating or minimizing your accent.
Pronunciation. He thinks this is the most important.
He really emphasizes it for reaching that native speaker level. And here's his reasoning. Communicating with a minimal, or ideally, no, accent unconsciously changes how native speakers react to you, how they behave towards you.
Interesting. It removes a barrier.
Exactly. A subtle, maybe subconscious barrier. And it also helps you adapt to a new self-image in that language. It lets you feel more authentically yourself when speaking it.
Right. It helps you embody that other identity we talked about.
Precisely. And he suggests a specific exercise for this, the perfect sentence technique.
Okay, how does that work?
It's practical. You need a native speaker helper. You open a book in the language you're learning, any book, random page, and read the first sentence aloud.
Just read it cold.
Yep. Then you ask the native speaker to rate your accent. Are you obvious, slight, or no accent?
Honest feedback.
Crucially, the native speaker then reads that exact same sentence back to you. You listen really intently, absorbing their pronunciation, the rhythm, the melody.
Okay.
Then you repeat it. And you keep going back and forth. They read, you listen, you repeat until the native speaker tells you they genuinely cannot hear any accent anymore on that specific sentence.
Wow, that sounds intensive.
He admits it takes patience. It can be slow, but he promises truly amazing results for your overall pronunciation if you stick with it.
I can see how that focused repetition would work.
Yeah.
Okay, pillar number 1, accent. What's the second?
The second pillar is using the verbs and expressions that locals actually use. Colloquial speech.
Ah, the everyday language,
Yeah.
not just textbook stuff.
Exactly. Textbooks are great for formal vocabulary, the foundations, but they often miss the mark completely when it comes to how people really talk. The difference can be huge.
Yeah, I've noticed that. You learn a word, then you go there and everyone uses something else.
Totally. He gives French examples. Like, the formal word for my work is le travail, but a French person chatting casually, they'd almost certainly say mon boulot.
Right. Boulot.
Or for the clothes, the book might say le vêtement, but on the street you'll hear le franc.
Francs, yeah.
And money, l'argent, is correct, formally, but locals often use le fricot or le sou.
Fric sou, right. These aren't just slang, are they? They're just normal, informal language.
Exactly. They're the language of connection, of fitting in.
And how do you learn these? Just osmosis?
Pretty much. He stresses you really have to pick these up one by one, mainly through interaction with native speakers. Listening, asking, using them.
It sounds like a lot to learn individually.
It can be, but Mark points out something interesting. Once you acquire a sort of critical mass of these colloquialisms, new ones become much easier to absorb, just like they do for a native speaker. You start to develop an intuitive feel for them. Okay, that makes sense. You build a foundation. So pillar 1 is accent, pillar 2 is colloquial speech. What's the third?
The third pillar is adopting cultural traits, specifically the nonverbal cues and sounds.
Ah, the stuff beyond words.
Exactly. These are often subtle, he says, and they require really deep, active listening and observation. You have to pay attention.
He gives a great example with a hand gesture, doesn't he?
Yeah, this one gesture. Depending on the culture, it could mean something rude or express disbelief, like, why on earth did you do that? Or even ask for food.
So many meanings.
But then, get this. In the Middle East, that exact same gesture is simply a polite way of saying, please wait, or hold on a moment.
Wow. That really highlights how much communication is nonverbal and culturally specific.
Totally. And he also gives some great auditory examples, how different cultures express basic sounds.
Like pain.
Yeah. An American bumps their head, maybe ouch. A German gets elbowed, maybe ow.
Oh.
French person steps on something sharp, maybe aye.
Aye. Right. Different instinctive sounds.
And affirmative responses too, like agreement sounds. An American might say
uh-huh, standard.
A German often And a French person, quite commonly,
It's subtle but different.
Exactly. And Mark stresses, these aren't just things to notice. You have to observe them, internalize them, and actually make them part of your natural reactions when you're operating in that language and culture.
So it becomes automatic.
That's the goal. So to really tackle all three, the pronunciation, the colloquialisms, the cultural traits, there's one thing that's absolutely essential.
Let me guess. Interaction with natives.
Maximum interaction with natives. It's non-negotiable. There's simply no substitute for that real-world immersion and feedback.
Right. Ideally, that means full immersion, like living abroad. That's the classic path.
Or even just living among native speakers in your own hometown, if that's possible. Creating that environment.
Mark even jokes that having a romantic relationship with a native speaker is highly effective.
The ultimate immersion, maybe.
Short of that, though, just spending quality time with coworkers who are native speakers, if you have that opportunity, can make a huge difference.
Absolutely. But what if you're not physically surrounded by natives all the time? Can you still work on this?
Yeah, that's a common situation.
He says yes. You can still make progress. Watching TV shows and films in the target language is great, but don't just watch passively. Actively mimic the characters. Copy their intonation, their phrases.
Okay, active mimicking.
Writing down new words or expressions you encounter and actually practicing them, saying them out loud is vital. Don't just write and forget.
Use it or lose it.
Pretty much. And here's one he really likes. Learning song lyrics.
Songs. Why songs specifically?
Well, songs tell stories, first of all. Singing along is fantastic practice for pronunciation and rhythm.
True.
And, especially if the songs are emotional, they can help deeply anchor those expressions into your active vocabulary. Singing them over and over makes them feel natural, like a part of you.
Connecting language to emotion. I like that.
Yeah.
So beyond these practical strategies, Mark also emphasizes the importance of the right mindset, cultivating a certain belief system.
Right. This is crucial for getting over that final hurdle towards feeling native-like.
Mm.
It's about genuinely believing that if you put in the work,
Hmm.
if you strive to sound like a native, express yourself like a native, talk like a native, and even act like a native in terms of those cultural cues, then you will achieve that native-like level.
Like a self-fulfilling prophecy, believe it and you can achieve it.
In a way, yes. Your belief drives the actions that lead to the result.
Okay, so if Mark could boil it all down, leave you, the listener, with just one single piece of advice, what would it be?
His number one tip: work on your pronunciation.
Back to pillar one.
Absolutely. He stresses that improving your pronunciation boosts every other aspect of the learning process right from the beginning. It speeds everything else up.
Oh, so.
Well, if people understand you easily, they engage more, you get more practice, you learn colloquialisms faster, you feel more confident. It's a positive feedback loop. He sees it as the absolute key to reaching a native speaker level, or at least, a highly convincing near-native status.
Fascinating. So Mark Green's journey, starting with that cringing teenager terrified of Russian,
Yeah.
it really offers these profound insights into moving beyond just words to truly embrace a new linguistic identity, to connect on that deeper level.
It really does. And, as for Mark's personal, rather elegant solution to finally overcoming his lingering aversion to the Russian language,
Yeah.
getting past those vivid memories of that cold Moscow night.
What did he do? Go back and conquer the metro.
Huh. Even better. He married a Russian woman.
Oh, well, that's certainly immersion.
And now, he says, he has little kids at home who speak Russian to him every single day.
Problem solved. That's brilliant. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into what it truly takes to speak like a native.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. So, as you reflect on your own language journey, maybe consider this. Which of those three pillars, minimizing your accent, mastering colloquialisms, or adopting those cultural traits, which one might you be perhaps underestimating or overlooking right now?
Mm.
And how could focusing more intentionally on that pillar unlock a whole new dimension of connection for you? Something to think about.